Imagine this. What if everything we thought we knew about Westeros was a lie? The cold winds of the north howled through the ancient stones of Winterfell, but something far older and darker stirred beneath its roots. Long before Robert's rebellion, before Rhaegar Targaryen's fateful fall, a secret had been born in the frost. Not whispered in dark halls, not etched into raven scrolls, but buried in the bloodlines themselves. Eddard Stark, the ever-warden of the north, had not only harbored secrets, he was one Daenerys Targaryen, known across Essos as the Mother of Dragons. Breaker of Chains, was believed to be the last daughter of the Mad King Aerys II. But what if she wasn't? What if, in a cruel twist of fate, shaped by politics and prophecy, her entire lineage had been a fabricated illusion? What if Ned Stark, the stoic lord everyone saw as unbending and cold, was the real father of the Dragon Queen? How would the war for the Seven Kingdoms unfold if ice and fire weren't meant to collide, but had always been one? It all began not in the Red Keep, nor Dragonstone, but in Dornware Ashara Dane. The elusive beauty of House Dane once danced with Eddard Stark under the pale moons of a tourney night. Their love was forbidden, hidden beneath the banners of war. When Ashara vanished, whispers blamed heartbreak, but in truth, she had fled, pregnant with a child who would never be known as a Stark. Instead, Varys, the spider, had intercepted her. Why? Because he had his own designs for the realm. The child Daenerys was smuggled to Dragonstone under the pretense of Targaryen birth, fed lies of blood and fire, and just like that, the game changed forever. Wait, what? Daenerys, a Stark by blood, the North's fireborn daughter. Years later, as Jon Snow returned from the Wall with dire warnings about the Night King, Bran Stark now, the three-eyed raven, unlocked visions beyond even his comprehension. Amid flickering images of dragonfire and shadow, he saw it. Ned in Dorne, cradling a newborn girl with silver hair and the violet eyes of Ashara, whispering, "No one must know." The vision cracked Bran's expression. For once, the boy who knew everything was truly shaken. Could this be real? Could Daenerys have fought all her life under the wrong banner? Suddenly, the loyalty of the North was torn. Sansa, seated at head table, narrowed her eyes. If she's truly of Stark blood, then the North is hers by right. And Jon Snow, torn by love and duty, looked upon Daenerys, not as a queen, not as a lover, but as a sister. Oh gods, how could this be happening? Across the sea, Daenerys felt it too. A dream visited her, cold place, a wolf, and her own reflection in a pool of ice. Not silver-haired, but dark, northern. Her soul felt pulled by something ancient and wrong. She demanded the truth from Missandei, from Tyrion, even from the captured Varys. Varys said nothing. Only, the realm needs a queen of both fire and frost. You were never a Targaryen. You were always meant to be a Stark. The revelation cracked. The sky. Dragons howled. The old gods stirred. The moment the truth clawed its way into daylight, Westeros shuddered. Daenerys stood atop Dragonstone's cliffside, hair lashing in the salt-soaked wind, eyes burning not with vengeance but confusion. Betrayal was a familiar sting, but this was something deeper. She had always felt like an outsider, even among her own kind. Viserys called her blood of the dragon, yet he treated her like a leash to power, not a sister. And now, the roots she'd thought were forged in fire were frozen in the North. She summoned Jon, not as a queen to a subject, but as a woman who needed answers. Jon arrived on Dragonback, the silence between them heavy. She turned slowly to him. "You knew," she said, her voice low, trembling. Jon's lips tightened. "I found out after Bran's vision. I didn't know how to tell you. You kept it from me." Her voice cracked like ice underfoot. "After everything. You hid this." "I didn't know what it meant," Jon replied. "I still don't. You're Daenerys Targaryen." "No," she snapped. "I'm not. I'm Daenerys Stark, the daughter of the man who lied to the world to protect his pride." That's when the weight of it hit her. Her entire war, her belief that she was reclaiming her birthright, it was all built on a false name. And the worst part, she felt relief. The madness that haunted the Targaryens. Maybe it wasn't hers to bear, but something shifted in her then. If she wasn't Targaryen, did the Iron Throne still belong to her? The council at Winterfell erupted. Tyrion insisted the truth be kept quiet, fearing it would split the realm. Arya argued that Daenerys had proven herself, no matter her name. Sansa, always cautious, raised her voice. We cannot hand over the north to a queen who may still be consumed by fire. She's Stark, Bran said flatly, and she's more than that. She's the balance between fire and ice. What did Bran just say balance? Because somewhere far north, the Night King stirred. The wall had already fallen. But something strange was happening. The White Walkers weren't moving toward King's Landing. They were circling Winterfell. They weren't seeking conquest. They were seeking ... someone ... Daenerys ... not as their enemy, but as something else entirely. Meanwhile, in King's Landing, Cersei's spies delivered news of Daenerys' true parentage. Cersei smirked with satisfaction, savoring the cracks in her enemy's alliance. She dispatched Qyburn to the citadel, whispering about ancient texts that spoke of the Flameborn of the North and the last balance, something only the Mad King once pursued before he lost his mind. Cersei didn't believe in prophecy, but she believed in using it. Back in the North, tensions escalated. Jon urged Daenerys to accept her true self and lead the war against the Night King, but she stood at a crossroads: fire or frost, Targaryen or Stark, vengeance or mercy. And that's when Drogon began to change. His scales, once jet black, began to ripple with streaks of silver and white. He no longer breathed just fire. Sometimes, in the cold hours of the night, he breathed mist. This wasn't just about blood anymore. It was about destiny. And destiny had just turned its eyes to the north. Shall I continue? Not even during the Red Wedding's aftermath, nor when the Boltons ruled in blood. Now, a strange calm had settled over the keep, one that felt more like the eye of a storm than peace. The lords of the north gathered in hushed circles, glancing toward Daenerys with a mixture of awe, fear, and something else, doubt. They knew her name, but now they had to ask what it meant, and she knew it too. That every step she took through halls echoed with Ghost Seddard's quiet resolve, Lyanna's whispered regrets, even Ashara Dane's vanished presence. She'd once been the breaker of chains, but now she felt like a broken chain herself, torn between two worlds. The northern air clung to her bones like it belonged there. Maybe it always had. Jon stayed by her side, silent but vigilant. His loyalty hadn't wavered, but his eyes, they studied her differently now. Not with love, with uncertainty. And then it happened. A raven arrived. Not from the citadel, not from King's Landing, from the ruins of Eastwatch. The Night King had moved. His army was not heading toward the throne. It was encircling Winterfell like a noose, slowly tightening, and with it came something no one expected. Wildlings turned to ice, giants with glowing eyes, and whispers in the trees that made even the bravest soldiers weep in their sleep. Bran, his eyes now more grey than blue, colder than ever, looked toward the weirwood tree and said just one thing: "They're not here to kill us." Daenerys turned sharply. "What are they here for?" "You." Everyone in the hall froze. "Oh gods, what?" "They remember you," Bran said, as if reading ancient scripture, "from before memory, before fire. When the first balance was broken, no one breathed. Even Arya, fearless as ever, lowered her eyes. The Night King doesn't want to destroy Westeros," Bran continued. "He wants to restore what was once taken, the fire that was stolen from him by the Starks." A chill ran deeper than winter itself. So this was never about thrones, not about kingdoms or power. This was about something older, something buried beneath generations of lies. Daenerys, child of both fire and ice, was the key to either salvation or absolute destruction. But how? Samwell Tarly, breathless from running through the library, burst into the hall carrying a weathered manuscript. "I found it. Old Valerian records there's mention of a starborn queen, a child of a dragon and a dusk. Dusk, meaning night, or ... Stark. The child would awaken something buried in the cold. And that something," Tyrion muttered, eyes wide, "is her." Dragon shrieked outside the castle walls, the sound sharper, more primal than before. He was changing. More mist spilled from his nostrils. His eyes had turned to soft grey ice and fire. But the danger wasn't just from the undead army outside. Cersei had already sent forces north, armed with wildfire and a mad plan. She would not let Daenerys or Jon live if there was a chance the people might love them more than her. If the prophecy was true, Cersei believed only death could stop it. As snow began to fall heavier over Winterfell, Daenerys climbed the walls and looked out into the woods where the Night King waited still, silent, watching. He wasn't attacking. He was waiting for her. But for what? Redemption. or sacrifice? Do you want to continue? The snow fell like ash, now soft, constant, smothering. Winterfell stood surrounded, not by fire, not by war cries, but by a stillness so deep it was almost holy. The Night King's army had encircled the north entirely, yet they hadn't moved. No siege, no bloodshed, just quiet, watching, waiting. And Daenerys, she couldn't sleep. She couldn't sleep. Each night brought visions, not dreams. Cold visions of a massive heart made of ice, beating beneath the weirwood trees, of dragons burning white, not red, of her standing face to face with the Night King, not in war, but in recognition, like they were both remembering something lost. What was this? Tyrion, drunk and trembling, tried to make sense of it. If prophecy has taught us anything, he slurred, it's that truth is always soaked in blood. The more noble the cause, the deeper the knife. If you are the balance, Daenerys, maybe you have to bleed for it. Daenerys didn't respond. She already knew, but she wasn't ready. Jon, meanwhile, was breaking under the pressure, torn between protecting Daenerys and defending the realm. He found himself questioning everything, his loyalty, his love, his own blood. If Daenerys was truly his half-sister, what did that make him? The rightful heir to nothing but confusion. Still, war was coming one way or another. From the south, Cersei's forces advanced, bolstered by mercenaries and wildfire. From the north, the dead watched with cold patience, and in the middle stood a queen with no name left to trust. And then, without warning, they attacked, not the dead, Cersei's army. Catapults rained green fire from beyond the fields, igniting the woods outside Winterfell. Flaming trees fell like screaming giants. Hundreds of northern soldiers burned alive as wildfire clawed its way toward the gates. Chaos erupted. Jon rallied the defenders. Arya vanished into the flames. Sansa was dragged to safety, and Daenerys Dane stood at the edge of the battlements, watching it all. But something was wrong. The flames didn't touch her. Not even the heat kissed her skin. She walked into the fire, barefoot, untouched, and Dragon followed. The soldiers watched in awesome weeping, some kneeling as Dragon and Ryder walked through wildfire and came out transformed. Dragon was no longer black. His scales shimmered in white and silver, glowing faintly in the night. Oh, my gods, he was becoming an ice dragon. Cersei's troops saw the figure emerge from the Noah, glowing queen with snow in her hair and blue fire in her eyes, and they turned. Fear conquered loyalty. Many fled, others knelt, but she screamed from her warship as it burned in the distance, which she didn't understand. None of them did. This wasn't sorcery, it was evolution. The Night King, from his silent perch beyond the trees, stepped forward. For the first time in known history, he raised no blade. He bowed. Daenerys felt it in her blood, the pull of something older than all 7 kingdoms. The Night King wasn't her enemy. He was her creation, and suddenly it all made sense. The balance had been broken when her birthright was stolen, when her blood was misnamed, when fire and ice were torn apart by lies, and now that balance had returned. But what would she do with it? Was she the salvation of Westeros, or its reckoning? Should we keep going? Winterfell stood in eerie silence after the firestorm. Flames had died down, but their echoes lingered in the air like screams trapped in smoke. The ground was littered with scorched armor, melted steel, and the remnants of Cersei's failed assault. But it wasn't the destruction that haunted the survivors, it was Daenerys. She had changed. The fire that once burned so bright behind her eyes was now shadowed by something colder, not lifelessness, something ancient, elemental. Her footsteps left no mark in the snow, and when she touched the stone walls of Winterfell, frost bloomed beneath her fingers. The people whispered in corners. Some called her a goddess, others a curse, but none could deny it. She had become something more than queen. The Night King stood at the forest's edge, his army still motionless behind him. His gesture of bowing hadn't been forgotten, but no one understood it. What did he want? Bran, now seated daily beneath the weirwood, searched deeper into the past. His eyes rolled back, his voice a whisper. She is the balance that was shattered when the first men took the land. She is the soul of the old world, reborn through Stark blood and Valyrian fire. She is the bridge between life and death. Jon didn't understand. He didn't want to. What does that mean? He demanded. Bran's head tilted. She's not just a queen. She's a choice. Oh gods. The Night King wasn't marching on Winterfell to destroy it. He was waiting for Daenerys to choose. If she joined him, he would spare the living. If she resisted, he would end the world of men. And she felt the pull. Deep in her bones, she understood him. She had always been on fire, always burning for something. But now, she saw that fire had never been hers. It had been chained to her, misused. But this cold, this silence, it listened to her. And that terrified her more than any throne ever had. Jon begged her, "Don't give in to him." "I'm not giving in," she replied softly. "I'm stepping into what I was born to be." He stepped forward. "You're not him. You're still Dany." She looked at him, eyes soft but unreadable. "I don't know who that is anymore." And then, the sky darkened, not with snow, but with wings. Dragon rose, larger than ever, glowing with ethereal white-blue scales. His breath now steamed like a frozen forge. And as he took flight, the Night King stepped forward again, this time holding out his hand, not as an enemy, as a partner. Jon reached for long, "Don't," but Daenerys walked past him, toward the Night King, toward her fate. And when their hands met, the world broke. An explosion of light and shadow tore across the fields, flattening snow, trees, and men alike. A roar echoed not from dragon but from the land itself. Every soul dropped to their knees. Bran's eyes flared white. Arya screamed. Sansa collapsed, and when the light faded, the Night King was gone. His army vanished, and Daenerys stood alone in the silence, not touched by ice or flame. Just still, she turned, her face serene. "It's done," she said. But no one could tell was that salvation, or the beginning of something far worse. The dust settled slowly, like the last breath of an age that had gasped too long. The Night King was gone. His army vanished like fog before sunlight. But what remained behind was not relief. It was dread, the kind that tightens in your chest when something doesn't feel right, but you can't say why. Daenerys walked back toward Winterfell with unnatural calm. Her footsteps didn't crunch the snow. Her eyes didn't blink. And as she passed the survivors, Jon, Arya, and Davos, they didn't know whether to bow or run. Even Drogon kept his distance, circling overhead like he no longer recognized her. The creature who once cried at her sorrow now followed from the skies with weariness in his eyes. Jon finally stepped forward. "What happened?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Daenerys looked at him, truly looked, and said, "I saw everything. The first flame, the first night. I saw the pact between the children and the walkers. I saw the betrayal that split the balance." She paused, glancing around at the castle, the sky, the people watching her like a goddess or a ghost. "I became what I was meant to be." Arya narrowed her eyes. "And what's that?" "Exactly." Daenerys smiled faintly. "Not queen, not conqueror, not even Stark. I'm the memory they forgot, the price of peace." Oh no, Tyrion felt it in his gut. This wasn't just prophecy fulfilled. This was prophecy reawakened. That night, the stars shivered, not from cold, but from something more cosmic. Maesters in Old Town felt their astral spin without touch. The sea near the Iron Islands boiled and then froze. Even in the dungeons beneath King's Landing, rats screamed and died without reason. The world knew something had changed, but Daenerys, she slept, peacefully, in the Stark crypts, as if sleeping in the bones of her blood gave her comfort. But that comfort didn't last, because across the sea, in the ruins of Valyria, something stirred. Deep beneath the molten rock and shadowed stone, a dragon's eye opened, one not born of fire, but forged in it. A heartbeat echoed in the dark, slow and heavy. And in King's Landing, Cersei's death had created a vacuum. No ruler, no order. Chaos swept the capital, and in that chaos, whispers rose. She killed the Night King without lifting a blade. She walked through wildfire. She commands a dragon of ice. And most dangerously, she may be the new god. Oh gods, this was never about the Iron Throne. It was about what came after. Back at Winterfell, Bran summoned Jon privately. "There is something I didn't tell you," Bran said. Jon leaned in, weary. "There's always something." When Daenerys touched the Night King, she didn't just destroy him. She absorbed his memory, his vision, his will. Jon's face hardened. "What are you saying?" Bran's eyes turned cold. "I'm saying, she's not Daenerys anymore." Jon's heart dropped. Was the woman he loved now the very thing they once swore to destroy? Winter in the north had always been a silent killer, but now it listened. The wind didn't howl without purpose. The trees didn't creak without meaning. All of Winterfell held its breath, as if the very stones feared Daenerys' presence, not because she threatened them, but because they recognized her. She walked the halls like a memory no one wanted to remember, and the people, once so eager to bend the knee, now looked at her with questions etched into their stares. Not who she was, but what she had become. Even the ravens stopped perching near her. The direwolves kept their distance, and Bran, who saw through time and shadow, no longer entered her mind. He couldn't, because something ancient had taken root in her soul. Jon sat in the godswood blade, across his knees, wrestling with thoughts sharper than steel. The woman he once loved or trusted was gone. What stood in her place was a force too large to name. She had taken the Night King's place, but had she also inherited his curse? Then Arya approached, eyes shadowed. "She needs to be stopped," she whispered. She whispered. Jon shook his head. "She saved us. She ended him," Arya corrected. "But not for us. For herself," Tyrion agreed. "She's not cruel. Not yet. But it's in her now the cold certainty of someone who believes they are the balance. That's worse than madness. That's purpose without restraint." And just as Tyrion spoke, Daenerys stood atop Winterfell's highest tower, alone, watching the horizon. Her eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight. Not fire, not ice. Something in between, something terrifying. In her dreams now, she saw not dragons, but shadows. Not iron thrones, but stone circles deep beneath the earth. A voice whispered from the cracks in time. "Not Valyrian, older. You are the seed of silence, the first flame's last breath." Suddenly Drogon crashed into the castle yard, but not in flight. He fell. The dragon that had survived battle, fire, even the Night King, collapsed. And when Daenerys rushed to him, the snow around his body turned black. His eyes glazed over with frost and fog, and when he looked at her, it was with fear. He feared her. Jon saw it happen, and something broke in him. That night, he met with Arya, Tyrion, and Bran in the crypts. "I need to end this," he said, voice hoarse. "She'll see you coming," Arya warned. "Not if I don't go to kill her." Jon replied. Bran, his voice empty, added, "She's become the embodiment of balance." But the world was never meant to be balanced. It was meant to fight, to struggle. That's what made it human. Jon nodded slowly. "Then I'll show her what it means to be human again." The next morning, Jon found her alone in the old Stark tombs. She stood before Ned Stark's statue, whispering to it. "I think I understand you now," she said softly. "You hid truths to protect. I do the same, but my truth is too heavy for anyone to bear." She turned, saw Jon, and smiled. But that smile didn't reach her eyes. "Are you here to kill me, Jon?" He shook his head. "I'm here to remind you who you were." Her expression darkened. "That girl is gone." He stepped closer. "Then let me speak to the woman who could have ruled the world, but chose to free it instead." For a moment, just a flicker, her lips trembled, and then the crypt shook. Stone split. From beneath, a cold wind burst upward, and the whispering voice returned. "The balance must hold." Daenerys' eyes turned white, and she began to rise into the air. What had they unleashed? "Shall I continue?" The very air inside the crypt thickened, as if reality itself had forgotten how to breathe. Daenerys hovered above the stone floor, her body surrounded by a shimmering aura, neither flame nor frost, but some cosmic mixture of both. Her silver-white hair floated as though underwater, her eyes pure white, glowing with unfiltered power. Jon backed away slowly, hand resting on the hilt of long claw. He didn't draw it. Not yet. The crypt of Winterfell began to crack. Ned Stark's statue split clean down the center, as though unable to bear witness to what unfolded before it. Dust and memory filled the room, the bones of Stark's past groaning, in protest beneath the earth. "You shouldn't have come," Jon, Daenerys said, her voice echoing unnaturally. "I had to," he replied. "I needed to know if there was anything left of the woman I loved." Daenerys touched down, bare feet gliding onto the icy floor. She looked at him, but it wasn't recognition in her eyes, it was sorrow. "You loved Daenerys Targaryen," she whispered, "but she was never meant to survive. She was a vessel, a prophecy, the last bridge." Jon shook his head, stepping closer, pain in every word. "You're not a bridge, you're a person. You saved people, you broke chains. I broke myself," she said, her voice faltering for the first time. "And I rebuilt into something else." A scream echoed above the guards shouting. Arya's voice, sharp and panicked. "Jon, she's rising again." The ground trembled. Bran, sitting by the weirwood, gasped and fell unconscious. From beneath Winterfell something ancient and buried began to awaken. Not the Night King, not even his army, but memory of force, so old it had never been named. Tyrion raced through the halls, holding a half-burnt book stolen from the citadel. "Jon, listen to me," he shouted. "The balance's not supposed to be permanent. It was never meant to exist inside one person. It's like holding a storm inside your chest forever." Daenerys looked up at the ceiling, her hands trembling. "I can feel it. I hear every whisper in the world, every cry, every prayer, every betrayal." Jon reached for her arm. "You don't have to carry it alone." She snapped her gaze to him. "But I am alone. That's what you don't understand, Jon. This power, it isolates the hearts of men, the hunger in kings, the lies in gods. And the truth is, we were always doomed to repeat the same mistakes." A tear slipped down her cheek, and froze mid-air. Oh gods, even her sorrow was colder than death. "I don't want to become a god," she whispered. Tyrion, breathless, held up the book, then let go. "The book says the balance was only ever meant to pass through a vessel, not live in one. You have to release it, back into the world, or it'll consume you." "But if I let it go," she said, "what happens to me?" Jon looked into her eyes. "Then maybe you get to be human again." And then, something shifted. A crackling sound filled the crypt, not of stone breaking, but of air, reality bending. Daenerys closed her eyes. She raised her arms slowly, and the room grew so silent. Even time seemed to pause. Then a burst of light, ice, fire, stars, shadows. It all surged outward in a wave. Everyone dropped to their knees, and when it faded, Daenerys lay collapsed at Jon's feet, breathing, blinking. Her eyes were violet again. The balance was gone, but had it left peacefully, or had it simply found a new home? The stillness that followed was unlike any silence Winterfell had ever known. Not the silence of death, nor that of snow-covered fields. This was the hush of something sacred, something final, as if the world itself had paused to take stock of what it had just endured, and what it had narrowly avoided. Daenerys lay motionless on the cold stone floor, her breath shallow but steady. Jon dropped to his knees beside her, his sword forgotten, eyes filled with something between terror and hope. She blinked, and when her eyes opened, those haunting violet eyes, he saw her, the Daenerys he had fought beside, the woman who once believed the world could be better, even as it tried to burn her down. She reached for his hand. "I'm cold," she whispered, her voice small, fragile, so cold. He held her fingers tightly, letting her feel the warmth in his touch. "You're home now," Jon said, forcing the words past a thick throat. "You're with us, with me, around them." The crypts had stopped trembling. The voices were gone. The strange magic that had filled the air had dissipated like mist beneath a rising sun. Above, the skies began to clear, and for the first time in weeks, the snow stopped falling. Outside, Tyrion, Arya, and Sansa watched the sky with unease. The storm was gone, but its memory lingered in every stone. Bran awoke with a gasp beneath the weirwood. "It's over," he murmured. "For now." Tyrion turned to him. "Did she succeed?" Bran hesitated. "She let go of the balance, released it. But balance doesn't vanish. It moves. It finds another place, another vessel." Arya narrowed her eyes. "So where did it go?" Bran said nothing, and that silence said everything. In the days that followed, Daenerys remained in Winterfell, watched closely but not feared. Her power was gone, at least, most of it. No more firestorms, no more glowing eyes, just a quiet sadness. A woman who had touched the divine and survived, but not unchanged. She often sat in the godswood beside Jon, watching the leaves dance in the breeze. "I remember everything," she said one evening. "All of it. The Night King, the First War, the whispers. I remember being more, and now I feel less." Jon looked at her, gently. "Maybe that's the price of peace." She smiled weakly. "Maybe, or maybe peace was never meant to last." Far to the south, in the heart of Old Town, a young novice in the citadel opened a scroll, sealed in dragon wax. As he read, his eyes widened. The scroll spoke of a future not yet written, of the soul of balance passed on in secret, of a child, born of fire and frost, neither queen nor king, destined to rise when the world forgot its scars. His hands trembled. He looked out the window and saw the moon flickered just once, Back in Winterfell, Daenerys whispered to Jon, "Do you think it's truly over?" Jon said nothing for a long time. Then, "No, but I think we've earned the quiet for now." And high above them, circling through the clouds, Dragon flew alone, watching, waiting.